I'm 90 years old, and I'm closer to the end than the beginning. Most days are quiet now. The noise of life has thinned out, and what's left is memory and a lot of space to sit with it. There's something I see clearly now that I never saw when it could have mattered. It isn't about money or work or even the big mistakes people like to talk about. It's about all the things I felt and never said. The cost of that silence has followed me my entire life, and it's heavier now than it ever was before. I'm not telling this to make peace with myself. I don't think that's something you always get to do. I'm telling it because time has stripped away my excuses, and what's left is the truth. And the truth is quieter than people expect. I wake up early these days, not because I need to, but because sleep doesn't hold me the way it used to. I sit at the small table by the window and watch the morning arrive. Sometimes I recognize the man in the reflection of the glass. Sometimes I don't. What I always recognize is the feeling that there were words I meant to say that never made it out of me. When you're young, silence can feel like strength. It felt that way to me. I grew up in a house where feelings were handled privately, if at all. My father worked, came home tired, ate his dinner, and went quiet. My mother carried everything else. No one explained themselves. No one apologized. You learned to keep things moving by not stirring them up. So I learned early that love was shown by providing, not by speaking. That loyalty meant staying put, not opening your mouth. I didn't question it. It was just the way things were done. In my 20s, I married a woman who laughed easily and asked questions I didn't know how to answer. She liked to talk about what things meant. I liked to talk about what needed to be done. We fit together enough at first, or maybe we just didn't look too closely. I worked long hours. I told myself it was for us. I told myself she understood. When she asked how I was feeling, I would shrug it off or make a joke. When she told me she felt lonely, I listened, but I didn't respond in the way she needed. I assumed being there physically was enough. I didn't say I loved her very often. I felt it, I think. Or maybe I felt something close to it. But saying it felt unnecessary, almost embarrassing. I thought consistency mattered more than words. We had children. I held them when they were small. I went to work. I came home tired. I fixed things around the house. I sat at the table and listened more than I spoke. I thought I was doing my part. There were moments, small ones, where I could have said something honest, when my wife looked at me a little too long, like she was waiting, when my son tried to show me something and stopped halfway through, when my daughter went quiet after telling me about a disappointment. Each time I told myself there would be another chance, another conversation, another day. The strange thing about time is that it doesn't announce when it's moving you past the point of no return. It just keeps going, quietly. You don't notice the damage while it's happening because nothing is breaking all at once. My wife stopped asking certain questions. She filled the space with friends, then with routines, then with silence of her own. I noticed it, but I didn't address it. I told myself couples settle into patterns. I told myself this was normal. At work, people respected me. I was reliable. I didn't cause trouble. I didn't bring personal things into professional spaces. That restraint was praised. It reinforced what I already believed, that holding things in was a kind of maturity. At home, it created distance I didn't know how to cross. I remember one evening clearly. We were sitting in the living room. The children were older then, mostly out of the house. My wife said very calmly that she didn't feel like she knew me anymore. She wasn't angry. That was the part that should have scared me. I wanted to say something then. I felt a tightening in my chest, like words pushing upward, but I didn't know how to shape them. I didn't know how to admit I was afraid of saying the wrong thing. So I said very little. I said I was tired. I thought things were fine. She nodded, and something closed between us that never opened again. She died years later, after a short illness. I sat by her bed and held her hand. She was thinner than I remembered. Her voice was soft. She told me she hoped I would be okay. There were things I wanted to tell her then. Gratitude, regret, love in its raw form. But the room was full of machines and people, and I fell back into the habit of silence. I told her she didn't need to worry. She smiled, and then she was gone. People say you should say everything at the end. They make it sound like a moment of clarity where words finally come easily. For me, it didn't happen that way. The end arrived faster than my courage. After the funeral, people drifted away. Life resumed its shape, but with a large piece missing. The house was quieter, too quiet. My children called, but not often. They had lives of their own. I realized then how little of myself I had shared with them. I had been present, but not open. I knew their schedules, not their inner lives. They knew what I expected, not what I felt. That distance wasn't their fault. It was something I had built slowly, brick, by choosing silence over discomfort. Years passed. I aged. My body began to fail in small ways. My hearing dulled. My hands shook. Friends disappeared one by one. Some died. Some just stopped calling. In the long afternoons, memories returned uninvited. Conversations that never happened. Words that stayed trapped behind politeness, behind pride, behind fear. I saw how often I had chosen safety over honesty. Not dramatic safety, just the safety of not being exposed, not being misunderstood, not being vulnerable. I told myself I was protecting others. I told myself I was protecting myself. What I was really doing was postponing connection until it was too late to have it. The turning point wasn't sudden. It rarely is. But there was a moment when it all came into focus. I was sitting in a small room at the care facility where I now live. A nurse asked me a simple question about my preferences. I couldn't answer right away. I realized I had spent so long adapting to what was expected that I wasn't sure what I wanted. That frightened me more than illness ever had. I thought about my wife, about how she had wanted to be known. I thought about my children, about how I had assumed they knew I cared. I thought about how many times I had felt something deeply and said nothing at all. I understood then that silence isn't neutral. It shapes the world around you. It teaches people what to expect from you. Over time, it becomes who you are. There are things now that cannot be fixed. I can't go back and speak into moments that have already passed. I can't tell my wife the things she deserved to hear while she could still hear them. I can't rewrite the emotional history of my children. I can apologize, and I have, but apologies don't erase what was never built in the first place. They acknowledge loss. They don't erase it. That's the hardest part to accept. Not that I made mistakes, but that some of them are permanent. People sometimes ask me if I'm proud of my life. I don't know how to answer that. I did what I knew how to do. I fulfilled my duties. I avoided obvious disasters. But there's a difference between a life that functions and a life that connects. If you're listening to this, I don't know where you are in your own life. I don't know what kind of silence you're carrying. I only know what it cost me. I believed there would always be time to explain myself, time to open up once things settled down, time to say what mattered after the important work was done. The truth is, the important work was saying it. You don't need perfect words. I waited for those. They never came. What matters is letting someone see you while there's still space for that seeing to change something. I'm not telling you to be dramatic. I never was. I'm telling you that small, honest sentences matter more than grand speeches. They accumulate, just like silence does. There are people in your life right now who may think they know you, but only know the outline. There may be things you assume they understand without ever having said them. I made that assumption for decades. Now, at 90, I spend my days with a lot of quiet. Some of it is peaceful, some of it is heavy. I've learned to live with both. I still feel things. That hasn't gone away. What's changed is that I finally let myself name them, even if it's mostly in my own head. I wish I had done that out loud when it could have reached someone else. If this meant something to you, you don't need to do anything about it right away. Just notice where you're holding back. Notice what you're waiting for. I'm not waiting anymore. There's no reason to. My time is limited, and I know that now in a way I didn't before. Acceptance isn't a bright feeling. It's quiet, and it settles in slowly. I sit by the window, watch the light move, and think about the words that stayed inside me for so long. Some of them are still there. Some of them I speak now, even if there's no one left who needs to hear them.